Welcome to another Chicks and Tips.
I'm Emma.
And I'm Jo. And today we are going to be talking about tips for solo hiking. So if you're going out and having some adventures on your own. So we wanted to talk about this because there's so many amazing benefits for going out and having adventures by yourself. It can be really empowering. I love going on my own.
I love going on my own too, yeah.
And it's amazing to get that time out in nature and having a bit of time for self-reflection. And I don't know, I find it really empowering doing stuff on my own. So we wanted to talk about that because, you know, there's always things you need to think about when you are adventuring by yourself. So we're going to talk about how to make it enjoyable and then how to be safe and maybe what to think about of extra things because you're by yourself. So, yeah.
Cool.
Emma.
Nice. I'll kick us off with all the fun stuff, my favourite stuff. So I'm all about making your hikes enjoyable and not a slog, so you actually want to go back out again. So what I usually do is I pre-download some music, some podcasts, some audiobooks, maybe a movie if I'm going for like an extended trip. Some people think this is like not pure hiking, but if you do anything for 8 hours a day, you're probably going to get bored. So it's nice to break it up, have something a little bit different to look forward to. And also if you're out there for a while, it might be nice just to have a human voice to listen to besides your inner monologue or outer monologue if you're talking to yourself, AJ. So I love doing that and making sure it's pre-downloaded because you won't have service. Something I do a lot from walking on my own is I have to force myself to have breaks. If I'm walking with other people, we like stop, have a snack, chill out. But if you're on your own, you're like, what am I going to do? Just sit and do nothing for 10 minutes? Yes, you have to take breaks. Force yourself to take them. You'll feel so much better. Otherwise, you'll be walking for a few hours. You'll be like, wow, I haven't eaten in ages and I feel like trash. So make sure you schedule in those breaks for yourself. I always take a little bit of extra food, some extra treats just in case. And then maybe bring something to do at camp. So having a book to read or doing some journaling, bringing some paints, like some little paints as well can be really handy. And then that brings a little bit of like an element of fun when you get to camp. You're like, all right, I'm not just going to have dinner and go to bed. I'm going to have something to do in the meantime. Helps pass the time. And then I love coming back and being like, I finished this book and I did some journaling and thought about some things and yeah, did that. And then maybe having a goal as well for the trip. So like if you're like, I want to go and I want to think about this particular issue and I want to come to a conclusion, or maybe a physical goal for your trip as well, and just keeping it fun and motivating in that kind of way. Nice. Awesome. I'll hand back to Jo for our safety.
Yeah, the fun. I think it's the fun stuff. Cool. So in terms of safety, so breaking it down to two things. So one is about the planning and preparation pre-trips. If you're going by yourself, sometimes it can be easy to rely on other people in the group to have done some of the preparation for you in advance. But obviously by yourself, you've got to make all your own decisions. So thinking about the route that you're going to take. So my suggestion, if you haven't done much solo stuff, is starting really comfortably within that comfort zone and pushing yourself, but not too far so that it then becomes a bit too terrifying. So starting with places that are either familiar to you, that you know how to get to, or that you've done before with other people. Or, you know, they might be places you're really comfortable walking, but maybe you haven't done it in more challenging conditions. So making sure you're starting in somewhere that's like quite familiar, or tracks that are quite well maintained or easily signposted if you're nervous about going and getting lost. So thinking about like what sort of things are the things that are worrying me about doing this hike, and then how can I take some of those fears away with my preparation. Things like thinking about what sort of access is there to the hike you want to do. So will I need to drive down a really difficult gravel road?
New Zealand roads.
Yeah, that's really steep, or that actually I think I might struggle with my car, or are there river crossings to get to it? So that's quite a big thing in terms of not necessarily the hike itself, but actually getting to it. So making sure you're picking somewhere that's got easy access, or you've got a car that you feel comfortable getting to that place in. It can also be quite good to take in your car like a power bank, you know, the batteries that you can plug in. So if you did ever get any car emergencies when you're out on your own, you can feel quite self-reliant if you've got a dead battery. that's one of my biggest fears when I go and find somewhere to hike that I want to go, is actually the access road, to plan that well. And then thinking about what the route is, so making sure you've plotted it well in advance. So do I know what the elevation is? Do I know how long it's going to take me, so that I can not get caught off guard and it take me longer than I think, and I might get back and it's dark and I don't really want to be hiking in the dark on my own. So making sure that's well prepared. Most people download the route on their phones, which is great. There's so many different map apps that you can do that with to plan it. But if you're by yourself, it's also really handy to have a backup paper copy, which I know we're not used to taking, but actually if you're out and your phone dies and that's the only form of map reading is off your phone, then that can be, really dangerous. So going back to the old school paper maps or just having a printout can be super helpful. And then, so once you've done that preparation, thinking about, is there any local knowledge I should know about the conditions right now? So whether that's looking on Facebook groups, asking questions on Facebook groups and tramping groups and clubs you're part of, asking people that you know that have done it recently, and then looking at what the weather has been doing the last week. And we've talked about how to be safe and stuff on trips before, so just making sure you're doing all your own research, because no one else is going to be there to also do it, and you're making a decision together. You've got to do it on your own. So being comfortable in the conditions that you're going out in. So if you get somewhere and it's actually a lot windier than you thought, or too windy that you feel you have that niggle of like, is this comfortable? Should I be doing this? Always trust your gut and listen to your gut. And if you have that niggle of, I'm not sure this is the best conditions for me to go on my own, is there an alternative or a backup plan that you've got already, or a backup route that you could take that feels a bit more comfortable? So if it's high winds and it was a ridgeline walk, is there a lower route you could take instead? Because taking unnecessary risks by yourself can be a little bit dangerous. And then a couple of other things. So just making sure you're always telling someone before you go that you've gone, what time you think you'll be back, having that emergency person that always knows where you are, that as soon as you're back from your trip and you get back into service, you can text and say, I'm back in my car and on my way home. There are a few location apps that you can download. So there is one called Live 360, or you could look at Find My iPhone, and then other people can just track your phone as long as you've got GPS signal, just to see where you are. So definitely recommend that as someone that's, if I'm single, like I have to ask friends and tell my friends, oh, I'm going to this place, which is maybe something I wouldn't want to put on my friends sometimes, but they would rather know that you're safe than you not tell anyone because you don't want to worry them. And then I think the last thing, is just, trusting your gut with it and having fun. And if there's somewhere new you want to try, just making sure that you've done as much research as you can, so you're going in super prepared to having a great trip. And then lastly, Emma's just going to talk about extra things to pack that would be handy if you're going by yourself.
Nice. Yes, let's talk gear, shall we? Our favorite topic. So I guess first tip from me is have a packing list and have it all written down, everything you need to take, which you do anyway, but it's even more imperative that you do it when you're solo, because you can't rely on someone else to bring it. So case in point, me and Joe going on a trip, I rock up and I'm like, oh, I've forgotten the toothpaste and I've forgotten this and this, and it's all good because Joe's brought it. So carrying the team over here. So obviously you're only relying on yourself, so just making sure you're ticking off every single item that you're taking. Not a big a deal if it's toothpaste, but if it's a warm layer or your emergency kit, that is a big deal. Next up, making sure you're bringing a PLB or some sort of emergency beacon, which you're probably going to be taking on your trip anyway, but definitely making sure you've got it and it's accessible for you. So if you fall, you don't have to get into your pack. It's like right there in your pocket, good to go. Always bringing a backup shelter. So I've had questions in the past being like, what if there's a weirdo in the hut and I'm uncomfortable, or what if there's really bad weather and I don't make it to the hut? If you have your shelter, whether it's a tent or a bivy bag or whatever, you are sorted. You can leave, you can make camp somewhere else, you're completely self-sufficient and it doesn't matter. So always have your backup shelter. Make sure your first aid kit is fully topped up with everything you need. That is kind of crucial, making sure you've got all those little bits of equipment, bandages, whatever, but also medication, so that you can, in a worst case scenario, get yourself out if you have to. I guess if you're a bit nervous and a bit scared about the other people aspect of solo hiking, so like, what if I meet someone on track or in the hut that gives me a bad vibe and I feel unsafe? It's unlikely to happen. Most of the people you meet out there are going to be super lovely, outdoorsy people. Even if they're big burly hunters with huge rifles, they're probably going to be super lovely and share their food with you. So just keep in mind that you may come across someone that you get a bad vibe from. Making sure you're safe, you feel safe. So maybe having like a weapon or some pepper spray or some form of self-defense. And then just always listening to your gut in those situations, not giving out too much unnecessary information to them about your location, where you're staying, and then letting them know that someone knows where you are and that they expect you out by a certain time. So just thinking about those kinds of things. I also like to bring earplugs for sleeping, because if you're sleeping in a tent on your own in the middle of nowhere, every little sound is probably going to trigger you and wake you up and freak you out a little bit. So if you are blocking out that ambient noise, you're probably going to sleep a lot better. That's pretty much it, I reckon. Those are our top tips for solo hiking.
Yeah.
If you haven't been out before and given it a go, but it always intrigues you, we definitely recommend it, even if it's a bit scary at first.
Yeah, and just start small and then build up, and then once you've done more and more, it won't feel quite so scary each time, and each time you can push yourself a little bit more. So
yeah, we think the rewards are worth it. And last year I ran a beginner's hiking workshop event here, and it was so popular. So I think we're going to do another one later this year, so stay tuned if that interests you.
Yeah, and if you have any tips as well that you'd like to share, then please pop them in the comments too, because we always love to hear any of your tips as well.
Awesome. Well, have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks.